So we're here at this event, all of us gathered together with this sort of common desired goal around how can we make the work experience more human, more engaging, more tolerable, whatever the word is, whatever your bar is.
Sure.
In your work right now, what are you seeing as kind of right in this moment in time the biggest constraints or the biggest issues that your clients are facing around creating a more engaging human work experience?
Typically it's growth, right? So I live in the Bay Area where it's like the go big or go home. Sure. And it's my least favorite phrase, actually. Well, I have a lot of
least favorite.
Yeah, so a lot of things tie.
Fair.
And typically the excuse is, we would love to do that human thing. We can't.
Right.
And the can't is money. The can't is time. The can't is the leader believes in it, but the board doesn't, or the VCs don't. But there's something that's other oriented. It's not me. Typically the people I talk to are like, oh, I would love to do that. It's just, right? And so what I try to get to is how do people feel like they have a voice, and instead of feeling like it's other oriented, like it's the CEO or it's the VCs or it's money or it's time, as I try to peel back what they can do, right?
At any level?
Yeah.
So
I mean, typically I'm speaking to more leaders, but I actually do believe that leadership is at all levels. And so you can impact any time.
So what do you find to be the lever or the tipping point, or how do you get that mindset switch to flip to, like, what is it that you find, or what are the mechanisms you find? Because I think that's a common challenge that people have, whether
right.
it's growth restraints or other, like how do I flip that leader's mindset towards one of being the solution?
At first I try and think, are they flippable? I have learned that there are some people who are so entrenched in their beliefs that I wish them well, but I want to spend time more with the people who already believe and they want to figure out the how. So maybe I'm a little bit filtering.
Okay.
But if they're on the cusp, like if I believe and they're growth mindset oriented and we could get somewhere, then I try to figure out what's blocking them in terms of if it's their own personal belief or if it's someone else's belief that I can help them see in a different way. I actually find a lot of it is psychological. Like I really believe in behavioral econ, and we can think super logically, but if we don't get below and understand the emotional side, we don't get there. And we've seen this in diversity inclusion where the business case has been made over and over and over again.
Right.
It only really shifts when you believe the moral argument, because the moral argument is either yes or no.
Right.
And if it's not yes, I'm not in with, you know what I mean?
Right.
So sometimes I'm not always trying to flip mindsets. I'm really fixing more on the how we get it done versus the should we get it done. Because if they don't really believe, I feel like there's enough believers that that's actually worth our energy, is spending time figuring out the how.
That's a really interesting point, because I think even some of this work, like at a Work Human conference, and we're talking about the things we're talking about, some of this is a moral argument too. Like it feels like, like the human workplace thing is a choice. It's a moral, because you can run a business and succeed at some level without treating people.
Oh, we've seen tons of it, right?
And so why has to be kind of connected to moral, even though I believe it's better business.
Yeah.
You've probably seen that. But
right.
That's a choice.
Right.
That's interesting. So when we talk about this idea of creating a engaging work experience or a more engaging workplace for employees, what is it that you think leaders most fundamentally misunderstand about that work? What is the thing that gets in the way or stops them from being on board with that?
That's a great question. What stops them from believing that this is a good idea?
It's a mindset largely, right? I mean, because
it's hard because I believe it.
Right. They dismiss, they often dismiss kind of offhand that engagement is X or whatever.
Right.
It's like there's something that whether it's engagement or doing the work to create a more human workplace,
right.
There's something going on that generally gets in the way. I'm just curious from either a belief or...
Yeah, so I think it kind of goes back to the logical emotional side, right? So logically, a lot of entrepreneurs or maybe leaders, right, are thinking about what's the algorithm or what's the market opportunity, and it's logic. It's business case. It's that's why you start a business. There has to be some sort of rationale behind it. And so if they're so focused on the logic and they're missing the emotional side, I also think then they're also missing the emotional side of the customer experience. So one gateway drug I've done is to help them think about how the customer experience, because they're usually locked solidly on that,
right.
how might the employee experience be the exact mirror of the customer experience, and how do we think about, like they run design thinking sprints to design their product, why not do a design thinking sprint to run how to make work better?
Right.
And so if we can align that way, sometimes that feels more business focused, even though we're getting to the ethnography and emotional side of the employee experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
part of it is using the business language in the employee experience in a way that then furthers the customer experience.
So when you are working with a client to help them start this process of making work more human
Yeah.
or engaging, whatever, where do you start? How do you take a client through that?
I like to think of it back to the what matters most, right?
Okay.
So meet them where they are. So if the request is we're overworked and we have a retention issue, or if it's diversity and inclusion and we have an equality issue, or all voices being heard, or creativity, I try to really get into what is the thing we're solving, because there are so many things to solve.
Sure.
And so one of the things we do in design thinking sprints is really try to make sure that we know what problem we're solving,
Right.
because there are too many. So I guess probably the thing I start with is how do we define the problem that they care about most, and then meet them where they are, and with whatever it is, then we can run a sprint against it, and we can put data against it, and and try and experiment.
Got it. When I would love for you to talk about, because it sounds like part of your work is also helping coach people around shifting their relationship with work and life, and how they think about that, and thinking about constraints and that.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how you help people sort of reframe that?
Yeah. So I love neuroscience and I love behavioral econ. I find that, especially in the Bay Area, it's a very data-driven, scientific community. And that's true for across companies,
Sure.
but it's just sort of a cultural norm.
Sure.
So I try to start with the science side, right? Which is okay, this is what we know to be true, and then how might we unlock some part of their belief system that gives them more of a virtuous cycle. So back to the work-life conversation.
Right.
If we know that if teams have design constraints over individuals, it's more effective. And I'll give you a real example. So Leslie Perlow is a professor at Harvard Business School. She did a longitudinal study around how when teams have design constraints over maybe not working at night, or Wednesdays, work from home, or whatever the team design constraint is, but it's about containing the time,
Okay.
but you have to do it at the team level, then the work quality actually goes up and the number of work hours goes down.
Wow.
And so this belief that more work is better can be systematically shown to be not true.
Right.
Right? But it matters that it's at a team level, because what's in an individual, what we've seen in the social sciences is that you say I would like flexibility. Now you're violating the ideal worker norm that you're all in worker,
Right.
and now
Right.
you're like an outlier, and
Right.
we don't really trust you, and you're not
Right.
really loyal, or whatever our belief system is. And so if we make it about team design constraints around work life,
Sure.
then it actually fuels creativity. And that's what we see in the research over and over again of, we all have design constraints, whether
Sure.
it's time, money, or location, whatnot. And so rather than seeing it as a negative, it's how is it fuel for creativity? And that's how I like to approach the work-life conversation.
That's awesome. Let's see. So one of the, I guess, fun questions we've been thinking about or tossing out is, if I handed you a magic wand, and you could use that magic wand to sort of eradicate or will into extinction a management practice or mindset or dogma that you see in today's reality,
Yeah.
what would it be?
The hero in work, like the 10x coder, the one person who typically is a guy. Normally it's not the heroine.
Right.
The myth of the hero versus the team. Work is done at a team level.
Right.
So unless you are a solopreneur, then you are the hero of your own story. Fantastic.
Right.
I would like heroes to be seen as team heroes.
Right.
How do we how do I make you better? How do you make me better? That.
Right.
I would love to have work be seen more as a team sport. Because even though it sounds right, when we go back to the office, what typically is like individual performance rewards, and this person worked all night, trying to fix this problem, and it still has this myth of an individual hero and zero sum. I'm really tired of the zero sum.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's a little bit of what gave fuel to that too, is this narrative we had over the last 20 or 30 years too, that says leaders started to buy into this idea that a small percentage of your workforce is producing a vast majority of the work.
Kill me now.
Right, and that also fed it, and so they're even afraid to confront the hero.
Right. It's like the rainmaker, the untouchable, the asshole who we can't fire.
Because we're so dependent, and the whole place will burn down and fall apart.
It's just a belief system, and typically, if you challenge that belief and try something new, something totally new might emerge. In fact, I just was hearing the guy from Microsoft say that they no longer have a high potential program because what it did was it created in-group and out-group people. Everyone has potential. If you believe in growth mindset, which is also a longitudinal study, right? Everyone has potential. Now, they may be in the wrong job, on the wrong team. It's not that everyone's going to thrive and succeed in that role. But the question is, how do we just see work as a team sport in a way of that everyone's high potential?
That's awesome. Any last quick words of advice for a leader or an HR manager?
So my advice for people, what you could do next week that would help the whole team, is to actually ask them. I believe that we don't have to have all the answers. So how might we ask questions of our team to say, how do we do better work together? What are the design constraints that fuel us? And how do we do it as a team? And that I believe will allow people to have better work and better lives.